Hi, this is Bruce Buffer, your voice of the Octagon, and you're listening to MMA Mental.
Welcome to this week's MMA Mental podcast. My name is Ray. As always, MMA Mental podcast is sponsored by UK Fightwear, and you can follow UK Fightwear on Twitter at UKFW, and we're also sponsored by the UFC Live Facebook page, which you can like on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at MMA Mental, and on Facebook we've got a Facebook page, MMAmental.com. You can also check out our UFC games page as well if you like fantasy MMA and fantasy UFC. So check out some of our fellow podcasts, the MMA podcast hosted by Jake and the Word on the Street hosted by Ramses. Okay, we've got a few guests lined up for this week. I managed to get on 6 guests, 2 regular segments included in that 6 guests. So we're starting the show with the performance potential with Dave Bond. He's had a couple of weeks off, but he's back now, and he talks to us again about the importance of strength and conditioning. And then we chat with Gerric Hayes. Gerric's preparing to face Nate Jolly at XFC 26. And then we chat with Kenny Degenhardt, and Kenny's preparing to face Brian Hall also at XFC 26. Then we move on and chat to Kurt Southern. Now this is a pre-fight interview, a day before Kurt avenged his loss to Jonatas Novaes with a devastating knockout. He had a controversial loss earlier on in the year, and he got the chance to avenge it, and he did so in style. And then we continue our Tough 18 segment with Davey Grant. Davey breaks down episode 5 of Tough 18 and talks about his fight with Louis Fisette, which was fantastic. And then we chat with Mark Pavelich, the CEO of MFC. Mark talks to us about MFC and also had some words of advice for the World Series of Fighting CEO Ray Sefo. Hopefully enjoy those interviews.
Good evening, everyone. This is Dave Bond doing the Potentia performance segment. Today we are looking at, or starting to look at, nutrition. I hope everyone's well. And one of the things I think that's come back as I've started doing these is one of the subjects that gets addressed a lot is nutrition. What should I be eating? What shouldn't I be eating? And that's from people both involved within the MMA world and also within just generally, just interested in nutrition, interested in losing weight and diets and advice. And so I thought what I'd do this week is kind of give everyone listening a bit of an introduction into the world of nutrition, because it is a bit of a landfill. It is a little bit hit and miss. There is people with lots of different opinions, so I'm going to put mine across, and I'm going to sort of, over the next few weeks, sort of talk to you how I reach those conclusions and how the things that I do work and how we get the results off the back of it. So with nutrition, next week I want to get someone in talking to you about biosignature testing. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I feel that to really explain where we go forward, I need to kind of give it a little bit of an overview. So biosignature testing is a form of hormonal profiling. So what we do with all of our athletes, all of our mixed martial artists, all of our models, all of our footballers, whoever we're working with, we will biosignature test them. And it's one of our specialists within the centre that does that. And we will, with a biosignature test, we're able to build up a hormonal profile of the individual. The hormonal profile allows us to ascertain where the individual's storing body fat, why they're storing body fat, the body composition as a total, how much lean muscle mass is being stored. So for fighters especially, if they've got to hit a certain weight, we need to take into account everything, not just body fat, but body fat and muscle mass as well. So if someone's trying to hit 70 kilograms and they're carrying 65, 66 kilograms of lean muscle, there's not a lot of room or leeway there for anything else. So we have to take into account everything when it comes to hitting weights for fights. With working with other athletes and other sports, maybe weight's not quite so critical, but certainly structure, certainly composition, certainly other aspects will come into it as well. So we would hormonally profile. Off the back of that, we would be able to tell in priority order what hormones within the body are out of balance, why they're out of balance, and what we can do about it to address that. So I think what I'm fundamentally trying to get to is everyone is individual. There isn't a fad diet or there isn't an eating plan that suits everyone. There may be principles that suit people. There may be certain aspects of different nutritional plans that will suit the same different people. But fundamentally, everyone is individual. Everyone's bodies function differently. Everyone's day-to-day activities are different. Everyone trains at different intensities. So the nutritional side of it needs to reflect the individual. So off the back of the hormonal profile, we will, like I said, we will ascertain the hormones are out of balance. And we do that by doing a 12-point caliper test around the body. The 12-point caliper test results being put into software, which then feeds back to us the data we need to be able to devise nutritional programs, supplementation programs, training programs to suit the athlete's needs, body compositionally as well. So as I was saying, once we have those results back from the computer, we then address the first top priority. So I was going to say, if we get back that the athlete or the individual is producing too much insulin, then we can address things like sugar within the diet. If we get back that someone's producing too much estrogen, then again, we can address certain elements of the diet, certain elements of day-to-day activities, certain elements of day-to-day life that could be increasing that estrogen, or if people don't know, estrogen is the female hormone within the body. The same sense is the fact is if the estrogen levels are high and the testosterone are low, we can then address that within the training and the diet and the eating the food that people take in to increase testosterone levels to ensure that body fat is burned at a quicker rate. So eating plans are very, very individual, very, very specific. And what I won't do is I won't be, and I apologise for this in advance, I won't be sitting here going, you must eat like this and you must have this in the morning, you must have this in the evening, because that's so individual. I suppose if I'm going to put a heading on what I do and the fundamental sort of plans I base my stuff on, it's very much kind of I use a very much of a paleo, caveman kind of stance on things. But that's not for everyone. Again, only if it suits. So, like I said, just recapping with the biosignature testing. First thing we do before we advise anything biosignature test, we'll mainly profile the athlete, find out fundamentally where imbalances are within the body, and then we advise nutritionally off the back of that. Going to common kind of trends that seem to be across the board is people taking in foods that they believe are good for them, but for that particular individual they don't break down. And this is probably where I get a little bit controversial with regards to food types, because again, taking on that paleo kind of approach, I have found through research and things like that and the testings that we've done that a lot of individuals find if you take the four kind of main starting off bread, pasta, rice, potato, that there's normally one, possibly two of those products that individuals don't digest as well as they think they are. So we've had it before where athletes have been coming in with high pasta diets, thinking they're getting lots of carbohydrates, and actually through testing and through the things that we've done, we've actually found that the pasta they're taking in, thinking that they're getting energy from, has actually caused them to almost store additional body fat because the body isn't able to digest it and process it as well as it thinks it can. So what I'm saying, again, as a bit of an overview, and I'll keep going back to overviews because I do tend to find I'll waffle off on a certain subject. As an overview, what I'm trying to say is, again, individually, I'm not saying this is for everyone, but there is going to be foods that we think are good for us, we think are doing us well, that perhaps we're not getting as much goodness out of possible. So when we start working with elite athletes, we know we might be working with 5-10% gains. That's all we want to get, like literally 1 or 2% it may be. And it may be that just by making a small change to the diet, we can achieve that. So that gives you a bit of an overview with regards to the biosignature testing. Like I said, I want to talk about it in a lot more detail over the next couple of weeks. But just to give you a bit of an idea of how we start with our nutritional programs, we always test. We look at the individual's body, we look at the individual's body type before we then make decisions on what we're going to do moving forward. Nothing's done on guesswork. Nothing's done on fad diets that we're just rolling out. Everything's done based on that individual's results. So with that, we then fundamentally implement certain things that may or may not go in the trends of what people believe, what people are taught. One thing we do tend to do a lot of, and we find has worked, not for everyone, but a high percentage of not only MMA fighters but also other athletes as well, is high protein breakfasts. That's always worked really well. Meat with nuts. We found little and often taking the grazing approach on. So rather than sort of having bigger meals sort of 3 times a day, having maybe smaller meals and using, example, nuts, maybe natural nuts as a kind of a grazing tool to use throughout the day. So instead of the body taking on large amounts of nutrition at once, then little and often has worked really well for particularly my clients. Exactly the same as we see cows in the field, animals on the farm, grazing constantly throughout the day rather than just having big intakes. That's worked really well. So there's lots of little things that I personally found through the research we've done have worked really well and seem to be replicated. But I also know, after a discussion with one of our other trainers today, they've had completely different results with clients that they've trained, and they've found, almost turning on its head, completely the opposite has worked for people that they've trained in different sports. So, again, going back to one thing I will stress throughout this is everything we do with regards to nutrition is very, very individual. Very, very specific to that individual and very, very unique. It's not necessarily right for everyone, and I'm not saying it is, but it's right for our individuals that we're training at a particular time. So, recap. Biosynthesis testing, first off, we always test. We always make sure we're doing it. We will retest as we introduce diet changes. We apply a grazing approach. Little and often always works, or seems to work for myself and my clients very, very well. We generally go higher protein for recovery to the body, especially while we're trying to ascertain if there is certain carbohydrates that do or don't work for the body. So we may have a little bit of a testing program, but certainly higher protein has worked better for people I've worked with. Supplementation, I find works again really, really well, especially post workout. If I'm going to give tip of the day, for me personally, post-workout drinks I think are a must. Again, I know other trainers will probably see me in sort of 100 quarters for saying that, but for me certainly, I think that whilst you're training, your stress hormone levels are very, very high, and you need to curb that cortisol, that stress hormone production post-workout. So post-workout shakes, again, the shake would be dependent on what you're trying to achieve results and also the individual with regards to calorie intake. But post-workout shakes, again, if you're unsure of what advice from local professionals good on that. Post-workout shakes, definitely to curb cortisol production. And like I said, that's just literally, whilst you're training, stress levels are high. Post-workout, you get your shake in you, it then curbs that cortisol production, which means you've not got negative stress hormone going on, or stress hormone release going on after you've worked. So, like I said, putting that one in there. Supplementation used when necessary. If you are lacking things within your diet, if you are lacking vitamins, minerals, then again or magnesium for another, or other things like that, then we will advise on supplementation as well. So I don't write off supplementation. I think it's a necessity. I think it's a necessity with regards to people's goals, what they're trying to achieve. So supplementation does work really well, and I think everything over the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years has changed so much that supplementation has become a real asset to that as well. Whereas before, maybe in the old days, supplementation wasn't needed quite so much. So just as a kind of general introduction to what I want to go over next, and I'm trying my best not to go into too much details. I'm trying to have to hold myself back a little bit rather than going off on a bit of a tangent, which I probably have done anyway on certain things, because I want to address pretty much every subject individually over the coming weeks, because nutrition is such a big field, and I've got different people that I want to kind of introduce everyone to over the next coming weeks who specialise in certain areas. As I said to you before, I don't pretend to be an expert in every single area, but what I do have is a team of experts that I can call upon if I need to within certain areas. Biosynthesis testing I don't do. One of our experts and specialists does that, so I feel only right that they talk to you in detail about doing that, because they'll be able to give you all the ins and outs of that testing. I know as a coach that all I get at the end of it is the results of what we need, what the imbalances are and what we need to do about it. But they'll be able to go in a lot more detail to it. Also, I've got nutritionists that I call upon, even though I'm a nutritional advisor myself, an advanced nutrition advisor. I have nutritionists, I have experts in that field that, again, I will consult and I will call upon. So I want to get those guys on to talk to you as well. So, like I said, over the coming weeks, I want to go into every single area in a little bit more detail, just to give you a bit of an overview. Because it's vast. Yeah, nutrition is vast. Everyone has their own opinions. Nothing's right or necessarily right or wrong, just different. And with MMA, it's really really different. And I say special is probably the right word, actually, because it's really with weight cutting and things like that, and maybe the extremes that we need to go to within this sport, it then means that we have got things like weight cutting and maybe things that in the kind of health side of the health and fitness way is kind of a little bit outside the box. So we'll go into that as a specific thing as well, weight cutting, and maybe to the extremes that we've had to go to making sure we hit weights. Fortunately, I think most of the time, because the journey, if for want of a better word, is good and the journey is right, that we've done the nutritional prep and new supplementation and done use the training well enough that the cuts become quite easy. But there is cases where the cuts are tough and you have to do what you have to do. So we'll go into that in a specific segment as well. So, like I said, just to give you a little bit of an overview of what we want to go over in the coming weeks, biosynthesis testing definitely one that I think will be massively interesting to everyone, regardless of mixed martial arts interests, regardless of any other sports interests, just generally. Hormonal imbalances are massive, especially out in the States. That's where it's devised from. Biosynthesis testing specifically. So yeah, definitely want to address that. I want to look at the paleo or caveman in a bit more detail, but kind of not because I'm endorsing or not because I'm pushing it, because I just want to lay to bed a few of the myths. So 1 week again, I'll go over that in detail and go through the bits that we like, dislike, use, don't use. We find common things in. So we'll do that as well. And we'll look at supplementation. We've got great links with a company called eProtein, and we work really closely with the guys at eProtein. They also sponsor a few of the athletes down our way, a few of the fighters down our way. So we've got great rapport with those guys. So we're constantly chatting to them about supplementations they're offering, how they're developing their stuff, all that side of it as well. So we'll use supplementation as I want to use that as a particular segment because that's a huge one for me, the supplements. So we'll go through that as well. So hopefully over the coming weeks we'll be able to really kind of address some of the questions that have been brought up. I think everyone's been saying, we've done strength and conditioning, we've looked at other bits and pieces, we've done training. What about the fuel that we put in our body? And do you know what? It's probably the most important one. So we'll take our time and we'll go for it at a nice rate. Hopefully, if anyone's got questions along the way, they can either message me on Twitter, ping you guys, ping a message over to MMA Mental, and what we'll do is we'll address them and answer them. So, like I said, anyone's got any questions at all, feel free to ping a message over to me on Twitter. It's at Dave_B_Potentia. Ping me an email, dave@potentiaperformance.co.uk. Or like I said, just get a message over to Ray and he'll pass it on to us. So any questions you've got with regards to nutrition, things that have worked for you, things that haven't worked for you, I love stuff like that because it always gets a good debate going on, and it's certainly one of the subjects I think you can pretty much guarantee everyone's got different views on. So like I said, over the coming weeks we'll go through what I found worked, what I found hasn't worked, but I will also be addressing other sides to the conversations as well. So like I said, over the next few weeks we'll go through all of that.
That's great, Dave. Thanks very much, and looking forward to seeing where this goes and seeing what information we can get out you over the next couple of weeks. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, like I say, it's such a subject that I'm passionate about. I'm probably not the most knowledgeable person in all areas, but the team we've got around us, it's a massive thing with any kind of training. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well.
I am now joined by Gerric Hayes. Gerric will be facing Nate Jolly at XFC 26, the Night of Champions 3, on October the 18th in Nashville, Tennessee. Gerric, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
We're doing really well, mate. You?
I'm good, man. Everything's slow motion right now, but maybe we'll be jumping later on tonight.
Well, we're about 2.5 weeks away from the event. How's training going for the fight?
Good. It's going pretty rough right now, but as things get closer, we'll start to ramp things down and focus a little bit more on weight cutting and techniques and whatnot.
We'll come back to that. We'll talk a little bit about the weight cut. I'm definitely interested in that because that's obviously been quite a controversial thing recently as well. But let's talk a little bit about your background. You started fighting professionally mixed martial arts in 2008, so you've been fighting for quite a long time. What got you into the sport?
Actually, a few years I was back back when I was in high school, I had seen the first UFCs, 1, 2, 3, and just kind of got into it then, and that's saw it and wanted to do it, so started doing it.
So how easy was it for you to get into a gym and start training, and where did you start training?
When or why?
Where, sorry.
Why? Well, again, that's it was something I needed to do in order to get into the sport. Back when I started, MMA was pretty much unheard of back in the late 90s. So it was like I believe there's one spot for jiu-jitsu. It was pretty much traditional jiu-jitsu. I don't believe there was any Muay Thai, any kind of there was boxing, of course. Boxing's everywhere. But other than that, MMA was just, it wasn't a very big thing yet. And over the years, as things have progressed, you can see I've kind of blown up, being able to see that from where I was at, like 14, 15 years ago. It's see a big different change in of how things are.
Before you started training, had you done any other kind of martial art before, either wrestling or one of the more traditional martial arts?
I did, when I was a kid, I did karate. That was a big thing back in the 80s. Did that. Of course, I wrestled in high school, and that was great for my background as far as before I got into jiu-jitsu, because it already gave me a good ground base. And I still do a little bit of wrestling. I help some high school kids in the area with their wrestling as well. Other than that, that's about all I've done, except for before jiu-jitsu. Once I started jiu-jitsu, kind of moved on to Muay Thai, and then currently real big into Sambo right now.
So you talk about the training then. So who are you currently training with? What camp, and who are some of the people that help you prepare for this fight?
Well, I trained my Muay Thai. I trained under Chris Beasley, who's well known here in Tennessee. I believe he's the best trainer here in Tennessee. I do a lot of cross-training with some of the other camps in the area. Doing a lot with Guardian, mixed martial arts. Mostly their jiu-jitsu and the MMA. And then, of course, my own camp at Bonafide down here in Nashville, Tennessee. We've been doing a lot with them as well.
What's it been like then for you? What, like you say, when you started, of course, it was pretty much unknown, and watching the way the sport's taken off, I suppose you've kind of seen it grow from being nothing, like acorns into a great oak tree, because you're seeing, there's so many great promotions everywhere now, and obviously you've watched it go from scratch to where it is now. So what's it been like being part of that?
Oh, it's nice to be kind of like a part of history, because I was here when it wasn't legal. Like here in Tennessee, it didn't get legalized here until about 2009, 2010. So once it was legalized, it was like, great, I can actually legally fight in my state. Whereas before I fought in my state as an amateur back in maybe 2001, where it wasn't legal here, rules were kind of out of the blue. They were 2 5-minute rounds. Box Commission okayed everything to be done for a couple of fights, and there were no cages. It was in a ring. So to see the way things are now, it's so MMA is so mainstream now. It's it's on all the time, like almost every channel. As before, you couldn't see it anywhere except for maybe pay-per-view or old videos.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely available more now, which is fantastic. You talked there a little bit about fighting in the ring. What would you rather, compete in the ring or compete in the cage?
Oh, I'd rather compete in the cage. That's just more comfortable there. I've never liked the ring. There's always that feeling you're going to get pushed out or fall out or something. It's just not I don't think it's a really safe environment as far as MMA goes. A little bit different for something like boxing, where you're standing the whole time. But as far as MMA is, it's got to be a cage.
Yeah, I agree, definitely, because especially when you're holding people up against the cage, working for takedowns, it just doesn't work with the ropes, does it?
No, it doesn't work. It's just way too easy once you hit the ground to go through them.
Now, you made your debut for XFC at XFC 21 Night of Champions 2. You faced Jason Blackford. Talk to us a little bit about how that fight went.
That fight, it was a good fight for me. I had played things out the way I'd want them to go, and mainly wanted to keep it standing, working to stand up, kind of pressure him, and keep the fight at a pace that I wanted to go at. And we ended up going down at early in the second round to a TKO.
I'm on the Sherdog Fight Finder, and it says that the referee was Nate Jolly. Is that right?
That's right.
And is that the same Nate Jolly you'll be facing, obviously, this in a couple of weeks?
Yes, we'll be fighting, or not fighting, but we'll be fighting Nate Jolly here in a couple of weeks. It's the same guy that reffed at that same XFC.
So it's obviously nice to get to XFC and get that win. So how it's been? Have you fought since then, or has that been your last fight, December 2012?
No, I fought once in between then, and then since then I've had a pretty busy schedule this year. And then of course I've got other fighters that are training, younger guys that are trying to get ready for their things, and I'm trying to help them there. I've also been doing a lot of grappling tournaments.
Yeah.
Kind of getting back into that as well. Just some of the roots of what we used to do. So
sorry, carry on.
As the year goes on, as next year starts, we'll probably I plan to do a lot more fights next year.
Now, one of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier on was about you're starting to obviously tailor your training down a little bit, and then you've got to think about your weight cut. And of course, there's been a lot in the news recently about weight cutting, because unfortunately there was a fighter who was cutting too much weight in Brazil, and he died. How much weight do you have to cut then, or how much weight have you got to cut between now and your fight night?
Between now and weigh-ins, I have about 15 pounds, which is relatively about what I usually have about this time. As I start to taper down about maybe 3 to 2.5 weeks out. Taper down nice and slow. That gives me enough time to do it comfortably, where I'm not sick, where I'm not feeling terrible the next day or the day of the fight.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been a lot of talk about it in the media. Do you think they should put maybe limits on how much weight people cut, or would you like to see make some change just to make it safer for the fighters? Because no disrespect to any of the fighters, because of how mentally tough a lot of the fighters are. Sometimes they'll try and push themselves beyond what limit they should do. Maybe if they're regulated, it might be a little bit safer for everybody.
Yeah, I believe there should be maybe a little regulation. I don't want to make it too strenuous. I think it's up to the fighter. They should. What should be done is someone really needs to teach these guys how to cut weight. A lot of people who are making these mistakes have no idea how to cut weight. They don't do it the correct way, and those are the guys that end up getting hurt or sick or even dying. So I really think that somebody should there should be somebody teaching these guys how to do this the correct way.
Yeah, definitely, because we don't want to see anybody get seriously injured, or obviously, people dying, of course, is extreme, but we don't even want to see anyone get seriously injured. So let's move on then. Let's talk a little bit about Nate Jolly then. You'll be fighting him on October the 18th. What are your thoughts on facing Nate Jolly in XFC? Because this will be your second fight in XFC.
Yes, this will be the second fight. I'm excited about it. I love fighting for XFC. I love the big shows and anything that's broadcast on TV or the networks. Nate's I think it's going to be a tough fight, but I'm always up for that. I heard from him he's more of a wrestler, a ground guy. I'm a ground guy myself, but I prefer to keep the fight standing. That's kind of my thing right now, and I just think that would work better as far as the fight is going. But if it goes to the ground, I'll be equally as comfortable there as I would standing.
Yeah, it's certainly gonna be a big fight. And obviously, if you get this, looking at this fight now, you win this fight, that'll be 2 fights in a row. Where would you like to see? Where do you see yourself going? Beyond this fight.
The sky's the limit. As far as XC is concerned, I really like that company, and continue to as long as they want to have me, I'll continue to fight for them.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on and giving me your time today. I know we're a few weeks out, so I know you're obviously very busy preparing for the fight, so thank you very much for your time.
Oh, no problem, guys. Thank you for having me today.
My pleasure. But before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to do some shout-outs. Do you want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and also let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter?
Sure, yeah. You can always hit me up on Facebook, or you can hit me at Instagram. Just use my name to look me up, Gerric Hayes, and it should pop up. And
have you got any sponsors you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out first of all to we look at Bonafide MMA. We should have Carlos Cummings, Combat Sambo in Panama City, Florida. And Guardian MMA, Nashville MMA, sponsors Cage Fighter, clothing, Kamagon Ball, and that'd be it. Everybody from the XFC, all the fans come out to see us on Friday night, and anybody out there that I missed, got love for you.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and wish you all the luck with the fight. I hope it goes well for you.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerric.
No problem, man.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm now joined by Kenny Degenhardt. Kenny has a big fight coming up, XFC 26 Night of Champions 3, on October the 18th, Nashville, Tennessee, against Brian Hall. Kenny, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, obviously, I want to talk about this fight. It's going to be a great card. It's a great fight. But before we do that, I just want to get a little bit of your background. How long have you been fighting professionally for?
Well, I turned pro, I guess 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. It's hard to remember now. But let's see here. Yeah, I turned pro almost 3 years ago.
What's your pro record?
I'm 3-0 as a pro, and I was 5-1 as an amateur, and 11-0 in kickboxing.
Oh, fantastic! So, how long did you do kickboxing for?
Actually, I started my career kind of started in kickboxing. I did kickboxing in 2002, and I trained that until I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and when I trained there until I guess 2005 is when I moved from Charlotte to Sarasota, Florida, where I trained with Eric the Hurricane Marshall for a little bit, and then back to Nashville. So, for quite a while, I guess about 5 or 5 years.
So what made you want to switch then from kickboxing to mixed martial arts?
I really enjoyed kickboxing, but, I came into Nashville and started training at National MMA, and the head trainer at the time, and the gym owner, Sean Hammonds, came over to me and, asked me if I wanted to do some jiu-jitsu, and I started doing that and picked it up really quick and started winning a lot of tournaments and, kind of got stuck on that. So did jiu-jitsu for the past 5 or 6 years and, been nonstop ever since.
How did you find the transition then? Because kickboxing is obviously, purely stand-up, and then switching over to MMA, you've got to learn, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu. What was the transition like?
It's kind of funny. At first, as a jiu-jitsu guy, my first year as a white belt, I couldn't, really my first 2 years, I couldn't get off my back. So I beat every tournament I won, I would have to submit them with a triangle or arm bar. So I was always on my back. And then one day I went to my trainer and said, I want to be a top guy, and I want to figure out how to get on the top, stay on top, and drilled and worked, and I did a ton of privates with him until finally, all of a sudden, I had a really good top game and really good pressure, and now this is several years later, and I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and it's good, man. It was a tough transition at first, but it definitely it worked out well for me.
And how, obviously, now that you're doing MMA, like you say, you've got 5-1 as amateur and 3-0 as professional, and you've got this jiu-jitsu base, which is fantastic with where you've come from. How good is it also having the kickboxing background? How useful is that?
It's pretty good. I'm definitely pretty well rounded. There's not a position where I'm uncomfortable. I was lucky enough to also have some Division I wrestling coaches and NAI and national champ wrestling coaches, and and Sean, my head instructor, is an amazing wrestler, and I've got guys my size and bigger and smaller, and I'm very well rounded. There's nowhere where I feel like I'm weak at. There's no position that really at any time where I'm like, I'm going to be in trouble if I get here. So it's nice to be able to fight in any arena, any place that I happen to fall into.
It's good. It's interesting there as well. You mentioned about the wrestling, because of course wrestling's probably the best base for MMA. How good is it for you that I get to train with such high level wrestlers?
It's my wrestling is fantastic. I'm real lucky. Like I said, I've got some great trainers, and they've helped my wrestling along so far. And I mean, I've wrestled with some of the best. I recently was out in Sacramento, California, and their wrestling coach is a 4-time All-American or a 4-time national champ in 4 different weight classes. The only person to ever do that. And I get to wrestle with them, and never at any point did I feel like I was in trouble or like, I don't want to be here. I never got in a spot where I was uncomfortable. So my wrestling is very up to par, and right there with my striking and my jiu-jitsu. So it's good, man. It's nice. Everything fits well together. I'm able to use it when I need it without kind of leaving myself exposed.
Now, of course, we're about a week and a half out, I think, from the fight now. How's training going for the fight?
It's fantastic. I'm just kind of on the weight cut right now. I train 3 times a day with an hour and a half in the morning, a 40-minute run midday, and then an hour and a half to 2 hours at night. I've got an amazing boxing coach, which we were going to take some pro boxing fights before this, but this fight came up, so of course we set that aside and just decided to take the XFC. But training camp has been great. Everything feels on point. I'm nice and strong and quick, and just got to worry about my weight now. So.
And what's your weight like at the moment, and how much have you got to cut?
I'm 151 this morning. I started out, I was 168 about 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and so I've got I'd like to get down to about 144, 146, and then I can actually cut the rest in water morning of. So
you're going to be big then going into the bantamweight fight. Then you're going to be a big weight.
Yeah, most of the time, my last fight was at 135, and then I weighed in at 134.4 the day of weigh-ins, and the next day I was at fight time I was 155.6. So I like to be the big guy. If you can be the big guy, it's always better than being the small guy.
Absolutely, and like you say, with your game, with you wanting to be pressuring and working from the top, the bigger you are, of course, the stronger you're going to be.
Yeah.
Now you're obviously 3-0, and you're fighting Brian Hall. He's 5-1, which is, you've both got really good records. What are your thoughts on Brian as an opponent?
Brian's tough, He's got some okay wrestling. He's got some okay boxing, a little bit of pro boxing experience. I know some of the guys that he's trained with, and I know some of the guys that he's fought. And I'm not terribly worried. Just like anyone else who'll step in the cage, you have to make sure that you're on point. But at the same time, I don't feel there's a position he can put me in where I'm going to be uncomfortable. I feel like my wrestling is at his level at least, and my striking is really, really good. I was actually sparring with a couple of professional boxers last night, and it was fantastic. I'm really lucky to have a great boxing coach, great striking coach. My boxing coach is Jeff Thomas. My striking coach, Muay Thai coach, is Lance Patrick, and they've really helped me to be a great striker. So. His 2 big things I'm pretty good at. So.
I mean, you've certainly put together a great record. Another thing I want to say, actually, of your 3-0, how have your wins come? How many submissions, how many knockouts, how many decisions of your 3-0?
Well, in my 3-0, I've got 2 submissions, 2 rear naked chokes, and 1 decision. My first pro fight was a really tough fight. It was actually at 155 pounds, and the guy didn't make weight. He was big, big athletic guy. But I was able to beat him. Luckily, I worked my butt off and grinded him out. The other 2 fights, my my second fight, I got a real quick rear naked choke about 2.5 minutes in, and then my fight in July, I beat him in 1 minute and 29 seconds by a rear naked choke. So I landed a really hard right hand, got the takedown, got on his back, and finished him off. So it's been good, man.
What do you get more satisfaction from, the hard fought decision win, or the quick 2 minutes, or quick 30-second rear naked choke win?
Well, I mean, it's always nice to get the finish nice and early. You put in a lot of hard work, and you want to get the finish, but at the same time, you want to be able to show your skills, especially for the fans. They want to see a good fight. So I always go out there, and I'm looking to finish at all times. There's no doubt in that. But at the same time, I'm not going to overstep something and try to force something and then get caught myself. So, I'm always looking to finish, but if the finish doesn't come, I'm still there to win the fight.
The other thing, of course, is, like you say, you're very, very well-rounded. You've got the striking background. You're training with some high-level wrestlers. You've got the jiu-jitsu background now with what with you earning your brown belt. If you had a choice of where the fight would take place, would it be on the ground or would it be on the feet?
That's been the best thing about this fight is I'm okay wherever it happens. I'm going to push the pace probably, and we're going to be striking pretty heavy, I'm sure, because he's a boxer, man. He's going to want to come out and throw his hand, and that's fine. I'm down for that. But chances are I'm going to land a hard right hand and drop him and get on top and finish.
Well, it's certainly going to be a great fight. It's fair to say you're both two huge prospects. With the records speak for themselves. You've put together 3-0. You've always got that stigma about you as an undefeated fighter. 5-1's a good record as well for Brian. It's going to be a fantastic fight.
Oh, I'm real excited about it. You always want to test yourself, and Brian's going to be a good opponent. It's going to be a great fight, man. I can't go out here and say, oh man, I'm going to demolish this guy, because hey man, he's there to fight just like I'm there to fight, and I have all the respect in the world for him. I'm very lucky to have the training partners I have and the background that I have, and in this instance, I feel very confident in this fight. So.
Well, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate you giving me your time and coming and having a chat with me.
Oh, I appreciate you having me, man. It's it's always good to talk to more MMA guys. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we let you go, Kenny, I just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. Do you want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter as well? Yeah,
for sure. Of course, I want to shout out Nashville MMA, Sean Hammonds, Lance Patrick. Those guys have made me the fighter I am. Jeff Thomas at Nemesis, my boxing coach. John Salter, who was he's down with it's not Team Punishment. I can't remember who he's with, but he's the main MMA coach for, where's Salter at right now? Oh, he's at Dethrone. He's at Josh Koscheck's team, and he was my main wrestling coach here over the last couple of years. He's now their main jiu-jitsu instructor. But, all those guys have been here to help me, and of course all my training partners, they're here day in, day out. Even if they don't have a fight coming up, they're here, and that's the great thing about this team is we're always here for each other. My beautiful fiance for putting up with me when I'm cutting weight, because we all know how much that sucks. And and that's pretty much it, man. I'm lucky to have the crew that I have, and I'm real happy to be able to spend time and get my 2 and 3 days in every day. So it's nice, man. I'm at the gym right now. We'll start our training session here in about 15 minutes, so it's perfect.
And
sorry, Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Facebook, you can find me at Kenny, King of Hearts, Degenhardt on Facebook.com, or King of Hearts MMA on Instagram. And I've always got something funny going on, something good to post about MMA or just anything, life in general. I'm always on there. You can always find me. If you have any questions or anybody ever wants to know more, I'm an open book, man. I don't really hide anything, so.
Well, excellent. Well, people, like you say, they can message you. You're always more than welcome to come back on the show. We can have a good old chat again. But thank you very much for your time. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure. Thanks, Kelly. Good luck, mate.
All right. You have a good day.
Bye. I'm now joined by Kurt Southern. Kurt will be fighting tomorrow night, MFC 38, at the Shaw Conference Centre, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, against Jonatas Novaes, which is, of course, a rematch. Kurt, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, I know you've just had your weigh-ins today. How did all that go?
It went normal, normal weigh-in. Sucks cutting weight, but once it's done, it's totally worth it. And I feel good. Had a big meal, had some water and rehydrating, and I feel great. I feel ready to go. Excellent.
That's the way you want to be. Obviously, after your weight cut and less than 24 hours away from the event. Now, let's talk. I do want to talk about the fight and talk about the fact it's a rematch. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your background. What got you into mixed martial arts?
Well, like a lot of people, I started off wrestling. I wrestled since I was 8 years old and did pretty well at it. I ended up, winning a lot of provincial titles, and I won a couple high school Canadian national championships and wrestled for the University of Saskatchewan for a couple of years. And I just kind of dropped out of university, so I quit wrestling as well. And a couple of years after that, I just missed competing and missed, the training and having something to look forward to. The every day, go to work every day and paying your bills and stuff just wasn't quite enough for me. So I wanted to do something, a little bit crazy. So I got into the MMA, and that's. I guess I met my coach at a gym I was working at, and he told me to come out and train at a gym, and so I did, and so I've just been fighting ever since.
It's fair to say that wrestling is an awesome base for mixed martial arts. What was the transition like then from wrestling to mixed martial arts for you?
It was, pretty easy. Like, not easy. I mean, the sport's hard, but I mean, the grappling was probably the easier thing to transition to because I was used to, body positioning and all that stuff, and the striking came pretty naturally to me as well. Most of my first fights, I've really focused on my grappling, but I think my last 3 or 4 or 5 fights, I've got to show a little bit more of how I've developed as a striker as well. And I think I'm just, I've always wanted to be a well-rounded fighter. I've never wanted to be just that wrestler who takes guys down and lays on them. I've always wanted to, use submissions, use strikes, and use every facet of the game, because it's not, one thing isn't going to get you by anymore. Maybe 7-10 years ago I would, but, not anymore. You got to be pretty well-rounded.
Absolutely. And to be fair, as a fan, no one wants to see the old kind of wrestler take someone down, line on them. It's horrible to watch. By all means, working for positions, looking for strikes, looking for submissions. That's brilliant. But just lying on someone is not good. But you obviously don't do that. You've got so many finishes on your record. You've obviously got a lot of submissions as well. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to submit someone, or do you prefer to knock somebody out?
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I just like to win, and that's what it's all about for me. And I like to finish. So I mean, if I can knock a guy out, awesome. If not, if I can submit him, then just as good. I mean, knocking a guy out is a little bit more of a bold statement. Putting a guy to sleep is kind of an unreal feeling. So I mean, I think it's for me, I think it's a little bit. I've had more success with submissions so far, but I'd love to have some more knockouts in there as well. So that's really what I have been working on the last, I would say 2 or 3 years, is really getting my striking to that next level. Especially in my hands. Just putting combinations together and landing crisp, clean punches. So.
If you had the option, then just a random question, you had the option to improve one area of your game by 50%. It's just someone's just going to give it to you. You've got it 50%. That area's improved. What area would you pick?
The game?
Yeah, just in general.
Yeah, I would definitely say striking, because at this point, at the highest level, it does almost. Guys wrestling a lot of times neutralizes each other. Their grappling neutralizes each other. So I think, when you get to that top level of the game, it does become kind of more of more of a striking battle. So I think the better I can get my striking, I think that my wrestling is good enough to keep it on my feet or, take a lot of guys down. But if our wrestling cancels each other out, well, it's a pretty much a striking battle, so.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's striking.
We've certainly seen that a lot, haven't we, when you've had two wrestlers and they can't take each other, they're not wanting to take each other down, so they tend to strike. Now, let's talk a bit about your fight. I mean, you fought at the last two MFCs, and interestingly enough, this fight is obviously a rematch. How come a rematch so soon after the first match?
Well, I think part of it was because I was very, very dominant in the first fight. I won the first 2 rounds hands down, and I was winning in the striking and without wrestling him, and on the ground I shot him right down. And he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, so I neutralized him whenever it did go to the mat. And in third round he caught me with an arm bar, but there was a little bit of a controversy to it because he did reach into the cuff of my glove, and he used that to kind of get the angle he needed to sweep me and arm bar me. So I think that it deserves a kind of like a redo. You know what I mean? Like the commission wasn't willing to do anything about it, and the MFC was like, hey, it was a great fight, and we'd love to see you guys fight again anyway. So might as well. I in my opinion, were the two best lightweights in the MFC because I just beat the former champ and title contender Mikhail Moromo. So I don't see why I shouldn't get a rematch. So because in my opinion, we're the two best lightweights there. So let's see who's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. How hard is it then, or how frustrating is it for you as a fighter when you put so much effort and training? Because we all know anyone who gets in the cage, especially at this level, it's not just about getting there and fighting on the night. You go through so much in training, and when you lose to something like that, when it's something that's if you lose because the guy's better than you or you get caught, that's fair enough. But when you lose and it's something trivial like that where he's done something he shouldn't do, how frustrating for you is that as a fighter?
Well, yeah, it is frustrating because, in my mind, it wasn't a clean victory, you know what I mean? If he would have armbarred me fair and square, and, without grabbing the glove, and it would be a lot easier to swallow, in my opinion. He beat me, he's a better guy. Even though I was winning the first 2 rounds, he caught the armbar, but yeah, when there's some controversy to it, it just doesn't quite sit right, you just can't quite let it go. So hopefully this one finishes in a clean victory, whichever way it goes. I want it to be, resolved, and obviously I'm planning on winning, but anything can happen in there, so. Yeah,
you want a bit of closure. It's not necessarily the defeat; it's the nature of the defeat, isn't it? What did the commission say then? Did you obviously try and appeal the decision?
Yeah, they just basically said, yeah, we see that he grabbed your glove and that's illegal, and but there's nothing we can do about it after the fact. If the ref doesn't catch it in the fight, then too bad, I guess. That was kind of what they told me. So I don't know whether they disagreed with me or they just didn't really want to deal with it, so at least the MFC was good enough to say, hey, here, let's do this one again. So I'm glad that they stepped up and did their thing. So
yeah, it's certainly a bit of a cop-out, and you're right. That was the next thing I was going to say. How was the MFC? And they've straight away said they obviously saw how it ended. It doesn't sit. I don't think it sits right with anybody. Have you had any contact with Jonatas since the fight or his training camp? Have they commented on it?
Yeah, I heard him say on an interview that he said, he didn't know he grabbed it. He was just reaching for something, and maybe that's true. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, and they do, they can grab the cuff of a gi, so maybe it was just instinct for him to reach and grab. But whether he did it on purpose or not, he still broke the rules, and ultimately that's what gave him the victory. So. Yeah, whatever. He admits that he grabbed it because there's video evidence, so he can't say he didn't.
I suppose on the plus side, at least he's kind of manning up and he's not turning the fight down. He's willing, even after taking a beating for 2 rounds, he's willing to get back in there and give you a chance just for closure, really, to get in there and do the fight again. Because like you said, there's no closure on this fight because of the nature of the way it ended.
Yeah. Yeah, it is good on his part. Like, I mean, yeah, he's willing to step up and be a true fighter and fight the fights that, you know, he's been told to fight. You know, from the MFC, they said this is the fight we want to do, and he said, yeah, let's do it. Whether he didn't want to do it or not, he's stepping up, and we're going to do it. So that's that.
Yeah, and that's definitely the right thing that should be doing. Now, I know we are obviously less than 24 hours out, and so all your preparation is done and all of that. I just wanted to ask you about your preparation. Who are some of the people you've trained with? What fight camp you're training with? And how's that in general? How's that gone?
The training camp's going good. I train in Saskatoon, with Alliance Martial Arts. I got Tyson Steele, who's a World Series of Fighting fighter right now. Adam Lorenz, who's been one of the top 10 featherweights in Canada. We brought up a couple black belts to help me in preparation from Regina. Jeff Wiley, Chris Desitol. So, yeah, I mean, the training and preparation has gone great. And, yeah, I feel like I've done the right things I need to do to come away the winner.
I think it's great that you're getting this fight, getting a chance to get this fight back after the way it ended the first time. I really appreciate you giving me your time today, Kurt, especially so close to the fight.
Yeah, for sure, no problem.
Before we let you go, Kurt, I just want to give you a chance to do some shout-outs. Want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and also let the listeners know about your Facebook and your Twitter?
Yeah, Kurt Southern at Kurt Southern on Twitter. And Kurt Southern MMA. Thank my sponsors, Contract Killer, and just my gym, Alliance Martial Arts, and all the guys that help me get ready for the fight. And thanks all my friends, family who come to support me, and anybody else who's coming out to watch the show or watch it live on Access TV. Yeah, thanks all the fans.
Brilliant. Well, good luck for the fight tomorrow, Kurt. I hope everything works out for you, mate.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I'm now joined by Davey Grant. Davey Grant's here to break down Tough 18, episode 5. And this one's even more interesting than the others just because Davey fought on this week's show. Davey, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi there, no problem, mate.
Okay, before we go on then, I'm just going to... I've obviously picked out a few topics that jumped out to me during the show. It was nice, actually, the show, because it was the first time the show really focused on you, because you'd been in the background quite a lot in the other episodes. Yeah. This time we got to see you a lot on screen. So did that make a nice change for you watching the episode?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was really nice to see how I was getting the trade and stuff, you know. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, let's start then. One of the early things we've seen was your friendship with Louis. How strange was it for you as a fighter, hanging around with Louis, sharing a room with him, knowing you were going to fight him?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit strange. Obviously, that doesn't normally happen. Usually, like you keep your distance from your opponent. So, like being with him, sleeping next to him when you're going to fight the next day, it was a bit strange. But we both knew what we were in for. You know what I mean? We didn't let it affect our friendship and just set it as business, really.
Yeah, it's nothing personal, is it? It is, like you say, it's business.
Yeah.
We've seen it in the past, though. I remember Ultimate Fighter Season 9, and there was, I don't remember the names of the guys, but there was 2 guys in there that become friends. Funnily enough, an English guy and an American guy, and the English guy wouldn't fight him, and he ended up pulling out. Or it might be the other way around. But it's silly, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, it's not personal. You're there to make a name for yourself, and it's a huge opportunity, and you've got to fight whoever's put in front of you, really.
Yeah, it's a sport the other day. I mean, lads go and play football against each other on a Sunday against their mates all over the UK, and it's the same sort of thing, you know what I mean? Maybe a bit more intense, but it's just competition, and then you're going to be friends afterwards. I mean, you go to the gym and you spar really hard with your sparring partners, and then shake hands afterwards. You know, it's just fighting. Yeah.
That's one of the things I like about the sport as well. In most cases, there's so much respect in the sport between the competitors, and we saw that in the build-up between you and Louis.
I mean, even if the isn't beforehand, then there nearly always is afterwards. You know what I mean? I don't mind it when people are hyping up fights and things like that, and getting them under each other's skin or like a bit of smack talk. You know, as long as the shake hands afterwards, I really like that.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think the smack talk adds to it. It does add intrigue to the fight.
Yeah, it's not really my style, but you know, like I don't mind it when people do it.
Okay, so this week we were also joined by Ronda Rousey's mum, judo world champion Anne-Marie Damas. You didn't train with her as you were cutting weight, but you had the opportunity to chat with her. What was she like?
Yeah, she was like a really intelligent woman, like really intense, and you can tell she really knows what she's talking about, and she's really passionate about the fight game, and you can see where Ronda gets the fire from, you know. So it was really nice to meet her.
I mean, when you look at what she achieved in her career, really, it was. I mean, mixed martial arts wasn't around then, but for her to be at the level she was at judo, I mean, and you could see from the way she was interacting with the fighters and with Ronda, she's very driven, just as Ronda is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We obviously got to see a bit more of you on this week's show as well, which I've already said, and we saw you cutting weight. How much did you have to cut for the fight?
I think I was getting up on the usual day at about 153 pounds, something like that. So maybe about 18 pounds. But obviously, once you stop eating and drinking, then it was only like that, and then maybe down to like 12 or 13 pounds altogether, like in water, I would have said, something like that.
Is that quite a straightforward cut for you?
It was. I mean, obviously, it wasn't really easy, but it didn't pose me much of a problem. It's never nice cutting weight, but I managed nice and comfortably.
Okay, let's move on to the fight, because it was a fantastic fight, fantastic performance by you. You came out strong in the first round. You struggled with your power and your striking. Talk us through round one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I knew that Louis was aggressive from his first fight, or what I've been told. So I just thought, it's going to be an exciting fight. But I thought I'm just going to stand there in the pocket. I thought I'd be able to get the better shots off. And then when I hit him with a couple, I could see him. So I could see I hit him with a. I think I can't remember which shot it was. It was one of the decent shots. When I got him up the cage, I just decided to unleash on him because he was more covering up, and I didn't feel too threatened. I felt confident to go forward on him. And then when we came in the clinch, I started noticing that I was stronger than him. But he had me leg trap really well. He nearly got a good takedown on us, which I managed to defend, which I was pleased about. And then when he tried to jump at me in the clinch, that's when I got the takedown. It was more like I just caught him off balance after he got the takedown myself. And then on top, I just felt nice and comfortable. I was getting off some nice elbows, some nice ground and pounds, and I just felt in control. I wasn't really worried. So I was really pleased with the first round. How
close do you feel you were to a round one stoppage? Because it looked really close at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, if it had been a couple more seconds, I think the referee would have jumped in and stopped it. I was just before the end, at about 15 seconds from the end, I was actually locking up a darts choke, and I think I could have finished it, and then I heard the 10-second tapper go, and I thought it wasn't going to be enough time to sink in and choke him, so I decided just to rain some elbows down and see if I could stop him that way, and I think I was just a few seconds short.
Yeah, I reckon another 5 to 10 seconds, because he was, at that stage, he was covering up. He wasn't protecting himself. He'd turtled up and he was just covering.
Yeah.
Now, in round two, you slammed him down hard and you're able to secure a nice rear naked choke. Talk us through the end of the fight.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as soon when he shot in, I thought I could feel him slightly break, and I mean, obviously, I know he's going to be coming in dizzy off all the elbows on the end of the last round. So I think he just wanted to clinch hold, and he was more in survival mode than attack. So I thought the best idea was just to put him on his back, and then I was just going to try and rain down some elbows again. And then once I got them out, he turned over, and then so I just decided to secure the choke, because I just want to win as quick as possible, you know. So as soon as I seen the choke, I thought that was the easiest and quickest way to finish the fight. So I just jumped on it and managed to get the finish.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, a little bit of an overview from me. Now, watching the fight, it felt like in round one you mentally broke him, and in round two he'd lost the will to fight and was looking for a way out. Going into round two, did you feel like you were close to a finish?
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously I thought I'd nearly finished in the end of the first. So coming out in the second, I mean, I was full of confidence, and I knew what I had to do.
How did it feel to win 5K?
it was brilliant, honestly. Yeah, it was a really nice feeling. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't really thinking about the money. I was just thinking about the tournament. But then once you sit and think about it, then you think, oh God, $5 richer, you know what I mean? And it's a really nice feeling.
You don't turn your nose up at that. What was the dressing room like after your fight?
Obviously it was a great mood, you know. Really nice to keep the win streak going for 2 hours. We made it 2-2, and I was really pleased, and obviously everyone in my change room was pleased for us as well, because we were a pretty tight knit group, you know. I mean, our team, the coaches, and all the fighters on our team, we were really, really tight, and it was a really good atmosphere.
I bet the team felt a big pressure lifted after being 2-0 down to 2-2.
Sorry?
I bet the team felt like there'd been a big pressure lifted, because after going 2-0 down, and you've now pulled it back to 2-2. Yeah, definitely. You know, back to level playing field then, wasn't it? Okay, so next week's fight is going to be Jessamine Duke and Raquel Pennington, and we'll go into that more next week. So we'll be back, of course, to break down episode 6. As always, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you very much for coming on.
Excellent, no problem.
And before we let you go, give you a chance to do some shout-outs. Friends, family, I know your mum enjoyed the shout-out last week. Sponsors, and also let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter.
Yeah, I'll give another shout-out to my mum, because it was a birthday this week on Wednesday as well. So, that was really nice. I was thrilled to get the shout-out last week. And also to my sponsors, Bout.Mark, Grant's Gym, Toxic Fightwear, The Biltong Man, and for all my friends and family for always helping us out, my girlfriend, my 2 kids. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, it's Davey Grant.MMA. So thank you very much.
Brilliant, and we'll be back next week to break down episode 6.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much.
I'm now joined by the MFC CEO, Mark Pavelich. Mark, thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure for being on.
I know we're a day out now, so I'm sure you've got a lot on. We're only about 24 hours away from the event.
Yeah, 24 and change. We're ready to go, though. It's like very exciting time right now. I've been in this business 13 and a half years, and I've never been this excited ever putting on a show. That's
excellent. Well, I'm going to get a little bit of your background, and we will obviously talk about the show. What was your background before you got into mixed martial arts?
I used to own an entertainment business, and I owned a martial arts school, and I owned a big entertainment company. And I just basically put the two together 13 and a half years ago, and here we are today.
And what made you want to set up a mixed martial arts promotion?
I saw a Japanese pancrase tape about 14 years ago, and I fell in love. It was on VHS. Someone brought it to me, and I just fell in love with the sport immediately.
That's awesome. What are some of your biggest obstacles being the CEO of Canada's #1 MMA promotion?
Well, you have to understand, when I started, no one knew what the word MMA meant. So I spent, half my life explaining that to people. I was walking around and people were like, what's mixed martial arts? They had no clue. And so that's a big thing that most people don't understand. I was in this sport when nobody else was in it.
What's it like then for you, having seen the sport grow? When you started doing this, could you imagine the sport would have taken off the way it has?
No, that wasn't, not at all. I never thought it would be like that. It's kind of shocking, that it's to this level. But I think in the last year or so, I think it's kind of planed off a little bit. I don't think it's growing right now. I think it's maintaining, but I don't think it's growing.
Why do you think that is?
Oversaturation in the marketplace. I think that's a big factor right now. That's been taking place. I think that's definitely one of the contributors to that.
Do you think there's too many mixed martial arts promotions, or do you think because I know some people have criticised UFC. Do you think they're putting on too many events?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think that's there's an overabundance of shows, and I just think that's what it is. I mean, people are just kind of getting. I don't know if the word is oversaturation, or if it's just there's just too much for people to follow, and I think that's the number one thing that we have to keep an eye out. When the Maximum Fighting Championship puts on a show, it's an event. It's not like something that's happened every day. It's something that happens every 3 months, and it's something that people look forward to.
So what would you like to see less promotions then? Is that you think that would be better for the sport?
I just think the quality-wise would be way better, right? I think if you're getting someone, for example, like your father that doesn't follow MMA as much as you do, and he comes and watches it, his first impression is going to be that show that he's watching. He's not going to sum it up by going, oh, I'm watching the UFC today, I'm watching the Maximum Fighting Championship, I'm watching whatever. He's going to look at that show he's watching, and he's going to think that that's what mixed martial arts actually is. So he has to go to a really good show to start, because if he doesn't, then it's a problem. It's like that's going to be in his head.
Yeah, I know where you come from, because ironically, funny you say that. I've taken friends to shows, and there might be some of the smaller promotions, if you like, and it's not been the best show, and that's kind of put them off watching it. Well, that hasn't given them like a full story of what MMA is. But what about the fighters, for example? If there wasn't these smaller shows, your regional promotions, where would they start to learn their trade?
In the gym. That's where they would learn their trade, right? They would learn it in the gym where they should be learning it. I think a lot of kids come now and they just, they're in the gym for 6 months, and then all of a sudden they want to become mixed martial arts fighters. I don't think that's enough time to develop the skills that it takes, even at the lowest level. I think it's important for kids to spend more time in the gym, get their game together, and then come out and fight.
So what about, because at the moment, the way there's obviously a couple of routes you can go into it, but a lot of guys, and I say guys, but I mean girls as well, of course, they don't go straight into professional. They do amateur. I mean, in the UK, we've got quite a few different levels of amateur. Would you like to see amateur and semi-pro? Would you like to see that stop then?
If it's done properly, I'd love to see it. Right, but it has to be done properly. It has to be done in a way where it just has to be done properly. Amateur boxing. I think amateur boxing does a decent job, and I think that that's the key component that we have to take more like from amateur boxing, where the guy has a book, where we can keep records of his amateur fights. That's the number one thing. You have to keep records of that.
You talked there about boxing. Where do you think MMA is in line with boxing? Because you talk about MMA maintaining. We've kind of seen a decline in boxing, apart from a few blockbuster fights. Where does MMA rate up to boxing at the moment?
Oh, no, it's not. But I love boxing. I've always loved boxing, but it's not a boxing MMA thing. It's just there's some things from the amateur side that we could take, that we can adopt into mixed martial arts, meaning how to keep track of the fighters. That's the most important thing, because people that do amateur MMA now, it's hard to track their records. It's hard to see where they were actually fighting. You have to keep track of those things, because you have to take things into consideration, like concussions, injuries, those type of things.
Yeah, I understand. I do understand where you're coming from. Let's talk a little bit about MFC 38. Like we said, we're 24 hours and change away. It's like you've already stated, it's a fantastic card. You're very excited for the event. But I like the way you did the MFC 38 main event. You got it decided by a fan poll. What was your reasoning behind that?
Because most people think right away that we should be putting the heavyweights as the main event, and I wanted to see if that was true. And I witnessed it with my own eyes. The bantamweights won it hands down. It wasn't even close, and that's just proof in the pudding. I let the fans decide. The fans decided, and that's that.
It's certainly true now that the day has gone where your heavyweights and only your heavyweights are your showcase matches. I mean, we've got showcase matches now in, probably 8 or 9 different divisions. And if you include female as well, you're probably looking at double-figure divisions. It's amazing how much the sport's come on.
Yeah, but you got a guy like Anthony Burchak, for example, that he commanded that he wanted to be the main event, and he's a 135-pounder, and he decided that he was going to let everybody know that that's the case, that he was going to be the main event, and people thought it was crazy, and at the beginning, he wasn't doing very well with the polling, but then a lot of people from all over the world started voting for him.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about some of the fighters, including him, and I can see why. I mean, his record is unbelievable. Well, on your card then, you've got a good mix of experience and you've got a good mix of up-and-coming fighters. I wanted to get your view on some of the up-and-coming fighters, and the first one I was going to say was Anthony Burchak, who I know is the main event. He's put together a fantastic record, and not only is he, an exciting bantamweight fighter, he's also a finisher, which sometimes the light divisions get criticised for not finishing. He's certainly the opposite to that. What are your views on Anthony Burchak as a fighter?
I just think that he's a total package. I think there's something really special about him. I think that he understands the game and the business side of mixed martial arts, which a lot of fighters don't understand that. And that's the key component now in this day and age. It's like You need to have guys that it's not just fighting, it's the whole aspect of selling their fight.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Anthony a couple of weeks ago, and definitely he knows how to promote himself. He knows how to deal with people like me, the media people. He knows how to. He's very good at explaining himself. He's very articulate, and obviously he can back it up as well. Which is it's one thing when he can talk. When these people talk and can back it up as well, it's brilliant.
It is brilliant, and that's one thing that fans crave. We want to see that. We want to see them fight prior. We want to see them fight during, and then we want to see them kiss and make up at the end.
Yeah, I agree. Love seeing the handshake at the end and always the respect being shown.
Exactly.
In 99% of it, it's fantastic. The other guy I wanted to ask about, he's 10-0, Jason South. He's got a really tough fight against Sam Alvey, who's kind of been there and done that, and he's fought, in lots of major promotions. What's your thoughts on Jason South?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think South, he's 10-0, and he's never even fought a guy like Alvey before, and I think Alvey's coming into his own right now at 20-5. And like I said, this is a classic matchup between striker and ground guy, and that's going to be the game, and we're going to see what happens on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I spoke to Sam as well. I spoke to both these guys. And Sam was in the other position in a previous fight where he was coming off against a UFC veteran. I think it was Jay Silver he was talking about. And, of course, he got a huge, huge win. But it's now like the shoe's on the other foot now. He's now the veteran, and he's got this, this young up-and-comer now who's coming to get get his mark off his head, if you like. So it's kind of like it's switched around, hasn't it?
Well, it has, but Alvey's got a lot left in him. This is not a guy that's kind of like past due. He's just kind of getting to his peak right now as well, and that's something that people are going to find out. I mean, he knocked out Jay Silva. He went 5 rounds with Elvis Mutacic, toe to toe, and Elvis looked like he got hit by a bus after the fight was over, and Alvey knocked out Jay Silva. This is a guy that right now that wants his respect. He wants to become the best, and he's going to try to prove it this Friday night on Access TV.
Now, the other guy I wanted to ask you about was I spoke to this chap. He was very quiet, but very, how could I put it? He got his point across, but he was very direct and to the point, I suppose you could say. It's heavyweight, 6-0, Smelino Rama. Again, he's Canada's #1 heavyweight. What are your views on him as a fighter?
Well, he's got unbelievable hand speed. He's got unbelievable tenacity for a kid his age. He's 21 years old, and sky's the limit for him. He's in the top 35 in the world right now in the heavyweight division. And, we'll see. He's fighting a guy like Anthony Hamilton. He's guy's a monster, man. He's 6'4". He weighed in at 265, but he has to cut to make 265. The guy's enormous, and that's going to be really interesting to see how Rama deals with an opponent of that size.
Yeah, and Hamilton's got an impressive record. Well, I think his record's 10-2, and that's a solid record as well, isn't it? Especially at heavyweight.
Exactly.
Okay, moving forward then, casting our eyes to the future. What are your plans for 2014?
Work harder, put on better shows, get more corporate sponsors. That's my plan.
Brilliant. I want to ask you one last thing, then I'm going to give you a chance to do some shout-outs. I know you've got a great team around you, but this is a kind of a current topic, but we've seen announced recently World Series of Fighting. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. They're going to be launching World Series of Fighting Canada. What are your thoughts on Ray Sefo entering the Canadian MMA market?
I think Ray Sefo should stick to fighting and let the people that know how to promote fights. I don't think he has the first clue how to do that. And that's, they can do whatever they want, but the people that they teamed up with in Canada, they just went out of business with their last show. So what they're doing is they're going into business with people that have no clue about the mixed martial art business. So what do you think the chances are that that's going to be successful? 0. And that's it. I like Ray. I think he's a stand-up guy. And, I always watched him when he fought in K1. But this is a different ball game. This is, Ray should stick to fighting, training fighters, and let the guys that know what they're doing promote fights.
Brilliant. Strong words. Well, it's been great having you on the show. I was looking forward to having the chance to speak with you. I just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. I mean, you've got such a great team around you. You want to shout anybody, friends, family, sponsors, and also let people know about MFC's Facebook and Twitter and your Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, everybody, tune in this Friday night, tomorrow night, live from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, the #1 mixed martial art in the country and one of the most exciting brands of MMA in the world, coming to you live on Access TV. 3 world title fights, not 1, not 2, but 3 world titles. You can check us out on Facebook, Maximum Fighting, on our website at MaximumFighting.com, on Twitter at Maximum Fighting, or you can check me out on Twitter. Get entertained, you know what I mean? So if you're bored, grab yourself a Heineken, get to my Twitter, and you can go to @Mark Pavelich. Your life will be set after that.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time, Mark. It's been a real pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed listening to those interviews. As always, we'll be back again next week. I'll be looking to get some more guests, of course, for next week, but definitely confirmed for next week. We'll be continuing with the performance potential with Dave Bond. And Davey Grant will be back as well, breaking down episode 6 of Tough 18. I've got 2 of the guys competing at XFC 26 that will also be on the show next week, Nate Jolly and Willie Taylor. In the last couple of weeks, I've spoke to both of their opponents. That should be interesting to get their take on the fight. I've got a new segment coming up, but that's not going to start next week. That's the week after. We'll be having a UK MMA segment, which I'm very excited about. Got a top MMA journalist who will be coming on to do that, so there'll be more to follow on that. And I'm going to try and get some of the stars from MFC 38 back on the show, who we interviewed in the build-up, try and get a post-fight interview with them as well. So thank you very much for listening.